Hello, I'm Bob Clark, the Executive Director of Cinekyd Enterprises Incorporated. What you're about to see is a production created by kids, members of Cinekyd. They're boys and girls who range in age from 7 to 17 years. This entire show was done by them. This is not a professionally produced motion picture or television show. You have a rare opportunity to witness the talents and the creative abilities of a lot of boys and girls who come to Cinekyd, which is located in Willow Grove, Pennsylvania, from 43 neighboring communities. So sit back and relax.
In the year 1897, a missionary boarded a sailing ship to return to his friends and family. Aside from his Bible, he carried with him a diary wrapped in a sealskin pouch. There he had recorded the events which highlighted years of service among the Salish Indians. No one knows what church he represented, or even his name. His memoirs included a strange tale of an enchanted forest, a woodland considered by both the Salish tribe and the white settlers to be inhabited by witches. Originally he had considered these tales no more than ethnic legends, but years of study and investigation made him wonder whether there was not some truth to the stories he had so carefully recorded. The ship capsized in the storm and all aboard were drowned. The body of the missionary and his strange diary were washed ashore. Only recently have the water-stained pages of his personal narrative been carefully transcribed. It seemed to be a forest like all others. Tall trees, thick green grasses, colorful wildflowers. But there the similarity ended. It was a place bewitched. The Indians knew the legend well, and the few white settlers who braved the wilderness were to discover the curse for themselves. To the Salish tribes, the rulers of the woodland were known as Chihas. witches and ogres who stole children. No earthly power could stop them. Many seasons had come and gone. Many children had disappeared. Life was filled with anguish and sorrow. But then, a strange and mysterious event took place. Spring morning, and the moon of greenness come again, 7 children played in the fields near to their village. Laughing and shouting, shoving and teasing, they moved farther and farther away from their homes. There was so much for them to see and do. Their games were so happy that none of them realized that their homes and their village were out of sight. More importantly, they had ignored all else and entered the forbidden paths of the forest of Ishmael. Their fate was sealed. Sturbridge and his wife Polly had left their home in Boston. With their children, they joined a small band of hardy pioneers. The journey west had been filled with difficulties, but they finally found land which they had intended to homestead. Joshua Sturbridge was now faced with an even greater challenge. 4 pioneer children had disappeared. One of them was their son. Polly Sturbridge begged her husband not to enter the woodland, She too was filled with grief at the loss of their little Thaddeus. But if her husband was also to fall victim to the powers of the darkness, what would become of the other children? And herself? Joshua was torn. He knew Polly was right, but how safe would any of the family ever be if he simply did nothing at all? And what if Thaddeus were alive, wounded, perhaps waiting for help? The discussion was interrupted by the sound of hoofbeats. 2 riders were approaching their homestead, and Joshua went to bid them welcome. Lucas Hobart and Chester Briggs were neighboring homesteaders. They too had lost children in this forbidden forest, and had come to discuss the situation with Joshua. The other settlers had decided to meet as a group the next morning and determine the proper course of action. Perhaps, as a group, they might reach an agreement. It was better not to act alone, and not to move in haste. Tomorrow they would finally decide how to rescue the children. The Salish tribesmen would pray to the Great Spirit for the souls of their lost children. Satumka was her name. Her husband had been killed on a hunt, leaving her with 3 small children. Her oldest son had drowned, the next son had died of the great fever, and now her daughter, the beautiful little Peiko, had been stolen by the Chihas. Everyone she had loved and cared for was gone. Now Satumka was alone. For 4 days and nights the song of death would continue, and the forest and the Chihas would be taboo, would be forbidden to speak of them again. Each day, Satumka journeyed far from her village, beyond the eyes of her tribesmen to an open field. There, amid her sobs and tears, she would pray to the Great Spirit for the soul of her daughter Peiko. Satumka implored the Great Spirit to hear her prayers. She had lived a good life. She had followed the teachings of the tribe. Why must her daughter, her only loved one, be a sacrifice to the Chihas? She had prayed for so many days. Her incantations had gone unheard. So she thought. But the Great Spirit was moved and answered her prayers.
am sent from the Great Spirit. I have come from Ilhali, the heavens. You, Satunka, are my Earth Mother. I shall avenge the Salish tribesmen and free the children.
Well, man, listen to me. Do not forget about the children.
The pioneers met at John Stanton's cabin. The loss of a child is a serious matter, and they were agreeable that a decision would be made by which the entire group would abide. John Stanton agreed with his angry neighbor, Joshua Sturbridge, that it was impossible to forget about the sons and daughters they had lost. But in any plan to rescue the children, they must protect their wives and the rest of their families. Sturbridge agreed and immediately suggested his own plan. 2 of the men would go search for the children, and 2 of the men would remain to care for the families of the hunters. Only one question remained. Who would stay and guard the families, and who would search for the children? Such a question would be determined by the men, the respective heads of their households, but it was their wives, listening closely, who would bear a different burden. Already faced with the loss of a child, they feared the sacrifice of a husband as well. The only fair decision would be made by drawing straws, too short, too long. The men drawing the longer straws would remain to care for the families. The 2 men drawing the short straws would enter the forest to search for the children. While the homesteaders planned and plotted, their children were at play outside the Stanton cabin. 4 stalwart lads devised their own strategy. They had decided upon a rescue mission which they would lead. David Stanton, whose father was at this very moment holding the straws which decided the fate of the other men, Mark Stanton, older, impetuous, and accustomed to giving orders, Henry Sturbridge, as brave as his father, but in a quieter fashion, and Chauncey Briggs, who was more of a scholar than an adventurer. The plan was quite simple. They would arm themselves with food, hunting knives and slingshots, and go to the forest themselves to rescue their brothers and sisters. Chauncey wasn't a coward, mind you, but he wondered whether or not this was a very good idea. Mark was annoyed. "Are you afraid to go?" he inquired. "Oh, no," Chauncey replied, "but maybe our fathers are better equipped for this sort of thing." Mark was confident that he could handle such an assignment, but he agreed to put the matter to a vote. All those willing to join the search would raise their hands. A spy in their midst, the 5th vote had been cast by Lucinda Hobart. She had overheard everything the boys had said. Lucinda, who despite her youth, knew all about the charms that females possess, and how to get her own way. Lucinda's visit was welcomed by at least one of the young men. Lucinda now switched to the direct approach. She simply announced that she would join the boys in their search for the missing brothers and sisters. Mark was firm. She wasn't going. Lucinda was determined. Oh, yes, she was. Lucinda took the rebuff calmly. If the boys did not include her in their plans, she was going back to tell their fathers what they were up to. And they all knew what that would mean. The boys got the message, loud and clear, and so Lucinda was included in their plans. Once more, they pored over their dirt map and outlined the strategy for their own dangerous journey. into the forbidden woodland. The selection had been made. Joshua Sturbridge would venture into the forest in search of the lost children. Polly seemed to know from the very beginning that her beloved husband would be selected for such a task. John Stanton had been similarly chosen. He and Joshua would be the hunters and rescuers, they hoped, while their wives and children were cared for by the Briggs and Hobarts. They were pioneer men who had braved the wilderness, endured the trials of a long journey west, and learned to live at peace with nature and the Salish tribes nearby. But everyone present knew that John and Joshua would face a greater unknown, a darker enemy than they had ever seen before. The wives and children, Mrs. Polly Sturbridge and Mrs. Emma Stanton, must be as brave in their way as their husbands. And so the journey began. Two courageous pioneers venture into the forbidden forest, perhaps to death itself. In the Salish camp, in the teepee of Chief Tishomingo, one of the squaws, Sotumka, brings to her leader a story that is both strange and mysterious. Sotumka told of her trips to the open plain, her prayers to the Great Spirit, her tears, and the white feather. Tishomingo knew the white feather was the sign of the eagle, considered the bravest of all winged creatures. Even Mishinok, wife of Chief Tishomingo, was drawn into the story. If this was true, then the Great Spirit had blessed one of the Salish women. So Tumka continues. The parting of the grasses, the mound of earth, the shaping, the transformation, and finally the appearance of the youth. His calling her Mother. His claim that he was sent from the Great Spirit. The tribal medicine man asked Sotumka what was the boy's name. Sotumka explained that the youth had told her he would reveal his true name when they returned to the village. He is here, waiting outside, said Sotumka. Tishomingo, chief of the Salish tribes. How do you call yourself?
What is your
I am Yoo-lah-teen.
Yoo-lah-teen, the legendary messenger sent from Ilhali, the land of the Great Spirit. Yoo-lah-teen, its literal translation meant the wondrous one. Tishomingo was a wise chief. The declarations of this boy were not sufficient proof. If indeed this lad were Yoo-lah-teen, he must be tested, and he must pass every test. Without a moment's hesitation, the lad accepted the challenge. He would undergo any test Tishomingo imposed. And so, the Salish tribesmen began to measure the power of the Indian boy. They pitted him against the swiftest runners of the tribe. He had the speed and poise of a young deer. He was even able to hurl his spear further than even the strongest brave of the tribe. Though he was still a boy, the most experienced archer could not surpass his distance and accuracy. Sakima, the most powerful Salish brave, had never been beaten in arm wrestling until the day he pitted his strength against this boy. But even more interesting was the appeal Yoo-lah-teen had for the tribesmen. They admired his courage, respected his tremendous abilities, but more than that, they came to like him. He seemed humble and gracious. Finally, however, having passed all other contests, Yoo-lah-teen would be faced with the greatest of all challenges, to determine his true identity. Slowly and carefully, Yoo-lah-teen was circled again and again by members of the tribe. His body was tightly wrapped in strong ropes. All weapons had been removed from his person. Strength, guile, cunning, all would be measured in his attempt to escape the rope prison. No member of the tribe was permitted to help. A brave had two choices. He could somehow free himself and pass the test, or he could admit defeat. In this case, he would be released, but be branded as a failure. The prison of ropes was only rarely used. Many braves had been seriously injured trying to escape. Some proud ones had died from days of thirst and starvation. Most challengers had finally admitted defeat. Satumka threw herself at the chief's mercy. This was only a boy. Whether or not he was Yoo-lah-teen was of no concern to her. He was proud, noble, and kind. He had called her mother. That was sufficient for her, whatever his name. This would be an answer to her prayers, a child for whom she could care. Yoo-lah-teen called to Satumka, who immediately answered the call. Your love fills my heart, Earth Mother, but do not worry. I am truly Yoo-lah-teen. There was no longer any doubt. This was truly Yoo-lah-teen, the wondrous one. Having been tested by his tribesmen, he reaffirmed his earthly task. He alone would enter the forbidden forest of the Chihas and free the helpless children. Yakpa, the deformed servant of the Chihas. Nukatu and Nanahuch, both consorts to the Chiha Queen. since neither witch had wanted this latest prize, it was passed along to Yakpa to keep with his other ill-begotten treasures. The musket. Where had this latest prize been obtained? Joshua Sturbridge and John Stanton. Unsuccessful in their search, they became two more victims of the Chihas, stripped of their possessions and strung up like carcasses. Brave pioneers, now helpless prisoners, left to suffer and die. Was there no one powerful enough to overcome the evil of the Forbidden Forest? Or the mystical magic of the Chihas? The intrepid little rescue party of pioneer children. Unknown to their families, Mark and David Stanton, Henry Sturbridge, Chauncey Briggs, and Lucinda Hobart had penetrated the Forbidden Forest. In their childish innocence, they were sure they could successfully rescue their brothers and sisters. They had come a good distance without incident. Deeper and deeper into the evil woodland, they crept silently, but their hearts pounded harder and harder. Chauncey had done exceedingly well. He was tempted to turn back every 5 minutes. The closeness of Lucinda filled his heart with courage. Such a display of mystic powers. The water was real, but who was the Indian boy, and how was he able to do such things? Yoo-lah-teen told the men his name, a further surprise as he fluently spoke their language. He was merely a Salish brave sent to destroy the Chihas. John explained their efforts and subsequent capture. Given time to rest, they would soon be able to join the Indian boy, but Yoo-lah-teen told them no. Yoo-lah-teen explained that no mortal methods were strong enough to defeat the Chihas. The Indian boy must face them alone, his magic against theirs. He would lead them to safety out of the forest. The Salish brave promised to return their children to them soon. In the pioneer settlement, Polly Sturbridge and the other settlers' wives as well had received another blow. The remaining parents had finally discovered what had happened to a group of their children. The Stanton brothers, Henry Sturbridge, the Briggs boy, even little Lucinda Hobart had formed their own rescue party and gone to search in the forbidden forest. Mrs. Briggs was confused. It was not like her Chauncey to disobey. He was not daring or adventurous. Emma Stanton was sure she had the answer. Her Mark was headstrong. David followed Mark, and more than likely they drew the other boys into the escapade. We'll have to wait, advised Martha Hobart. Her Lucas and Chester Briggs had gone to search for the children. Maybe the men would intercept them in time. But the women knew that this was an empty hope. Once more they would wait and pray. They had all experienced their share of hardship since the beginning of the journey west, but nothing had ever prepared them for the suffering and losses which now beset them. Yoo-lah-teen told Yukpa to lead them to his masters. "You wish me to take you to the all-powerful Chihas?" questioned Yukpa. Chester Briggs and Lucas Hobart had reached the edge of the forest in search of their wandering offspring when Joshua Sturbridge and John Stanton emerged. It was obvious the two hunters had undergone great stress. Chester and Lucas were filled with questions, but Joshua and John were not immediately able to respond. "You would not believe what we have seen," gasped John. "The creatures who dwell in the forest are beyond human understanding." "The children, were you able to find the children?" Lucas questioned. "We never even came close. Those Chihas, they overcame us. We were left strung up to die," explained John. Chester Briggs asked how the men managed to free themselves and escape the forest. Joshua explained that their rescuer was a strange Indian boy named Yoo-lah-teen, who possessed his own mystical powers. The lad had promised to free all children and lead them to safety. Lucas then told his friends of the unofficial rescue party, the 5 pioneer children who had sneaked off on their own and entered the forest. The situation was worsening, but there was little the men could do. For now they must regroup and decide on a new plan. They must also wait to see how successful the Indian boy might be.
the whip.
The leader of the Chihas, the most powerful witch of all. Now she and Nanahoop would kill Yoo-lah-teen.
Mother?
Come to me, my son.
Bloodlust for vengeance, Ishmuth forgot that Yoo-lah-teen and the spear had come from Il-Hali, the land of the Great Spirit. In placing both hands on his weapon, Ishmuth sealed her own doom. The nightmare had ended, and all the children captured by the Chihas were free at last. Ishmuth, Nuckatu, Taisohi, Nanahoop, and the little ogre Yukpa were all destroyed. The forest, which for many years was a place of evil, now sang with the laughter of children and the songs of winged creatures. No longer would Salish mothers speak in whispers to their children of the powerful forest witches. White settlers would now come to Homestead and live in peace, free from fear. The pioneer children would return to their families. There was considerable rejoicing among the settlers. Little children could now enjoy the beauty of their homestead, growing to adulthood without fear. Some parents regarded their offspring as brave warriors and were exceedingly proud of their courage in surviving such an ordeal. Praises were heaped upon them. However, there were some fathers who were still disturbed at sons who had deliberately disobeyed, sons who had gone to play in a forbidden area, sons who had not done what they were told. And there were some boys who knew what that meant and what was coming. Fortunately for boys, there are mothers whose gentle ways calm angry fathers, so that all is forgiven. And in the Salish village, there was also great rejoicing and happiness. The promises of the Great Spirit had been fulfilled, and the dark curse had been lifted from the Indian people. The Salish children had been set free from the power of the Chihas and would tell of their adventures. These stories would be passed from generation to generation. Some of the children's adventures and things they had seen would be incorporated into games and dances. Their experiences would become a part of Salish tradition. What mattered most was the return of loved ones. Heiko had come home to her mother, and Satumka's heart was no longer empty. She was fulfilled, with both a daughter and a son. When the son grew to manhood, he became a chief. Salish lore is filled with his exploits. His name meant the Wondrous One. Yoo-lah-teen.